Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back, everybody. Love every time we get together with her because we get so much insight into why we think the way we do, our mindset, even changing that, helping us organize thoughts. She is just a wonderful psychotherapist that works with children, adolescents, adults, and we've talked about a lot of stuff in the last 3 podcasts that I truly believe is uber beneficial to moving your life forward. We're actually going to recap some of that and kind of put it all together for you. Susie Engel is back with us. How you doing today?
I'm great, Steve. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I love your approach to all of this. And I'm not saying this because we're together, but you are so friendly, grounded, positive, and it doesn't feel like a therapy session. I don't know if that makes sense, but it feels like
that's good.
I have to imagine when somebody works with you, it's like talking to a friend that has insight into why we do what we do, why we think what we do. Very different. And I haven't had an official session with you. We've just been doing podcasts, and that's what I detect. But what about the last 3 that we've done in terms of what we've talked about? Can we break that down for everybody?
Yeah. And first of all, thank you for noticing that, because I really appreciate people are people. And in session, I'm a person, yes, I'm highly trained, educated in this field. And I've also worked on myself to be able to feel grounded and be grounded and to feel comfortable. But it's interesting, the contrast of some styles of therapists where they have the insecurity that they need to bring some sort of authority or some sort of judgment to sessions. And frankly, I think that I get as much out of discussions with everybody I talk with throughout the day, including you, as I do, just reflecting upon myself, because I hear what other people are sharing, and I bring that back to them. So it becomes this conversation that has a certain sounding board that wouldn't happen without the client and me. It's not generated from me.
Sure. It's almost as if you are a reflection of them, but you adjust the reflection so they can see it better, if you will, using, the mirror. Because sometimes we don't see it. We want to look at ourselves, but it's not clear. You give clarity to that reflection and understanding why I look that way in the mirror. Again, I'm being just using an analogy of the mirror, but yes, you make us understand what we're thinking. You said something I really want to dig into before we talk about previous podcasts. Mm-hmm. You said you did the work on yourself.
Yes.
And I find that so refreshing. Like I don't think I've ever heard anybody that offers mental health insight, psychotherapist, therapist, whatever, psychiatrist, anything. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, yeah, I've done the work on myself. And I think that's really, it's really cool.
And here I am on a podcast announcing it to the audience. And it's the truth. I mean, if I didn't work on myself, I would really have no business in this profession because it's a lot of responsibility. And I can't bring unresolved issues to clients who are coming in earnest to resolve their own issues. So it's really important, and it's an ongoing life process to work on ourselves and to work through our issues and to have that understanding. So yes, I can't see, and there's no shame in it. It's not, I think people assign vulnerability with weakness, but the bottom line is I'm just honest about this. If I didn't work through, I would not be of service to my clients.
1,000,000,000%. And those that you are close to, even new relationships, I wish we could say, hi, how you doing? It's very nice to meet you. Have you done work on yourself?
Yes, I think that's a great beginning.
Like even in the dating world, you meet somebody, you're having a drink, whatever, having some apps. And tell me, have you worked on yourself? And can you give me a list of your medications? I'm just kidding. But just, it reveals a lot and understanding.
That's really funny.
I don't, you know what? Part of me is kidding. Part of me isn't, because, I lived that life, and many of us don't know that we need to work on ourselves. We think,
oh my gosh, can you imagine looking so closely and not realize that, oh, I need to figure some things out. Oh, that's a real deprivation right there.
Okay, question for you, and I'm very, very interested to hear the answer. How did you know? And you said it's an ongoing process, and I right there with you, because life changes every second. So as we adapt to that change, then you realize things in yourself that maybe you need to just tweak a little bit here and there. But how did you know that you did the work on yourself and there was a change, like an aha moment, or maybe one in particular, or just a graduation of change? Can you identify any?
I mean, I can identify, let's see, I can identify the sense of security I've achieved. Oopsies, sorry. Sorry about that. I can identify the sense of security I've achieved over the work I've, throughout the decades of work I've done.
So define the word security.
So, I mean, my barometer, my inner barometer, I don't know exactly how to put the words to it. Sometimes things are ineffable. But my barometer is, what's my stress response, which I don't think is abnormal. But how do I act upon that stress response? And that kind of touches a little bit of what we talked about during the first podcast, is, am I reacting, whether it's hyper, whether I'm having a big reaction that doesn't really fit the situation, so it's a big emotional reaction, or whether I'm hypo and just shutting down and not responding. Those are two possible reactions. And had I not worked on myself, or prior to working on myself, probably in adolescence, I can say, I know when I had an overreaction or when I had an underreaction where I bottled things or shut down or was a good girl or whatever this is for me. And I could go through, I mean, you're not going to get my life history, because there's all sorts of facets for all sorts of situations.
Sure.
But in general, the way I understand myself is my stress response is natural. We all have stress response.
And it's good. It protects us.
It's healthy. Yeah, we're alive. We're informed. We're plugging into all of our emotions. We might have 13 emotions or 100 emotions at once. That's all fine. But it's the acting upon. So how am I coping? How am I expressing myself? And that's where I can see, wow, I am really coming into my own over the decades. So now we can speak of my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, and then we can go on and on and on.
And I can completely relate to what you're saying. And I'm seeing myself, and hopefully others that have done some work on themselves, kind of a parallel there. So reaction, we talk about that. When something presents itself, maybe in the past, some of us have freaked out. Oh my God, I can't believe what's going on. Blah, blah. Now you might do it for a split second, but now you're okay. All right, I got it. I've assessed the situation. Yeah, we'll take care of that. Whereby it could have been days previously, and now it's a minute, 5 minutes, maybe it's an hour, and you're like, oh. And I even find myself now looking back at a situation now when I reacted to it, and even thinking, wow, Yeah, that was yesterday. That kind of surprised me. I had a little reaction to, I'm fine now. Like I even look like I'm kind of surprised that it was like boop, that fast.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't think it's abnormal to have like a little blip on the radar. And like
Sure.
we said, the stress response is healthy. Our system is working. It's
Yes.
just the accumulation of how we're, informing ourselves with that sense of security, with healthy self-worth, with that groundedness that you mentioned earlier, which I really appreciate. I mean, I find that to be a compliment, and I
I feel
appreciate
it
that.
from you. I feel it. Like
Yeah,
it's very strong. It really is.
thank, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
So this is how I assess how I'm doing, is how am I coping? And I think it's a universal way to kind of judge ourselves. But it's also, am I beating myself up about something? Am I reliving, not reliving, but playing
Processing.
or replaying conversations. Oh, was I supposed to say this or supposed to say that? I don't do that. And maybe in my younger years, I may have had some experiences of that, but that's the signal to get help. That's the signal to say, wait a minute, something's happening that I need extra help to figure out so that I don't live my life doubting or questioning, because that's a huge indication of low self-worth or
Mhm.
insecurity, as we were talking about the
Yeah.
first podcast.
Absolutely. If you're replaying conversations, like how did that go? Did I say the right thing? Should I said this? Should I
Should
have said
I?
that? Yeah.
Yes.
So I have a question, and it's almost we didn't even plan on,
Going into this.
but we are reflecting back on the last three shows, and the first one
Yes.
was reaction part of it, and that's
And
what we're talking
trauma
and trauma.
and the hallmarks. So yes.
So,
And what's your question? Sorry,
uh, how do
I
you
didn't.
know that you're not just sweeping it under the rug? How do you know that you've processed something, as opposed to, like we talk about, things don't bother us and others who have done the work in the same way. But how do you know you're not? And you've said something to this degree a moment ago, that you go numb. Like, I'm just going numb. I don't even know I'm doing it. I'm going numb, so I don't have to feel it, deal with it. How do you know you're
Shut
doing
down.
that? Yeah.
I use the word shutdown. You're
Yeah,
saying going
it's
numb.
good.
That is a hypo. That's below. Hyper is I'm having this giant emotional reaction or rageful reaction or thousands of examples of that. And the hypo is I'm going to go numb. I'm going to shut down. And how do we know the difference? Well, how do I know the difference? I mean, and it's interesting because I'm also a chef, and we'll have to get into this in the future. But a good chef or a good home chef or cook cleans up as they go, and it's just the proper way to do things. And I make the parallel that if we clean as we go, then there's not a buildup. So the dinner is actually delicious because there's not a buildup of a huge mess that we dread, or that we get in an argument that I cooked and you cleaned. And I mean, that's just nonsense anyway. It's just immature, childish, like
Sure.
beyond childish. And it's but if we clean as we go, then we realize we're not sweeping something under the rug. So this could be done in a myriad of ways. Listen, one way is if somebody is having a conversation with me, or if I'm in session with somebody, or if I'm just in a social situation in my personal life and something doesn't sit well, I have the ability to identify that immediately and to speak about that, not in a defensive way, but in a mature way of saying, this is the way I see it, or this is the way I think about it. And it's interesting in this situation, whether it's the contrast of it or whether this other person just didn't acknowledge it, or I have a need to express whatever I have a need to express, and I do. Now, and how that's received is really not my problem in social situations. Now with clients, we have to
Mm-hmm.
work through things, but in social situations, I feel like, wow, I just expressed something that was important to me or true to me, and this person isn't handling it well. My work is personally, Susan Engel, Susie, is this person is struggling to cope with that, and that's not my problem. And then another way of dealing with this without sweeping things under the rug, because that's not cleaning as we go,
Mm-hmm.
is to internally have a dialogue with ourselves and just say, look, I was at the grocery store and I didn't like how this person treated me. I mean, this happens to millions of people every single day in the public. And I can't nitpick, I can't bring up every little thing. So internally, I have to process this. I have to digest this. So I walk out of this grocery store whole, not that a piece of me was stolen away from me. And
Mm-hmm.
that's internal work. And that has to be something within my awareness. And that's another way that I know I do not sweep things under the rug. Sweeping things under the rug is, it comes from early childhood. Now we're getting to so we recapped a little bit about trauma. Now we're recapping a little bit about attachment. And then the third podcast was about couples. So patterns in relationship.
Yep.
Sweeping things under the rug, I can guarantee stems from how we as children, and we all were children once,
I
adapt,
still am, by the way, but just continue.
which is a good thing.
I
We
think
need
so.
to have our
I
child
admit.
part.
Well, okay, so hold on. When somebody says, you're acting just like a child, because we are. There's part of us that's still there, for good or for worse, subconscious, whatever. But yeah, I think there should be a child in all of us. Yeah.
Well, and there should, because it's the free spiritedness that many people lose.
Yep.
It's
Curiosity.
the purity of joy. It's curiosity, as you've said. And is it childlike? It should be human-like. I mean, we should all have that, Maya Angelou, this little light of mine, that children's song that she references. We should all have that light lit within us. And
Mm-hmm.
so many people lose that because of their experiences of trauma. And they can reclaim it with therapy. I mean, it's just a fabulous thing.
Now, you said sweeping under the rug, and that could
Yeah,
go connect to our childhood. How is that?
we're taught to be trauma informed, that we as children, we can't really challenge the adults in our lives, in the sense that we're 100% dependent on our caregivers. So this isn't our whole childhood. This is just the formative part of our childhood, the very early, but we're still conscious, and we know as an infant, if my mommy's gone, she's holding me, but she's gone, distracted, maybe under the influence, maybe depressed, maybe upset about something. If my mommy's gone, I have to adapt one way or another. And some go louder and more rageful, and some go, like you mentioned, numb or shutting down or being good, or just saying, I'm not going to cry for things
Wow.
now. I'm just not. And these are infants. I'm not talking about when we're 7, 8, 9, 10 years old and we have the awareness, like, you know what? Something's off. Maybe some kids don't really get that, but a lot of kids do. Kids are really like the bomb.
But it's very interesting how, and we've talked about it before, how it goes back to your childhood. But even in the infant side, as an adult, something takes place and you sweep it under the rug, and that could potentially go back to your infancy.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And guess what?
Wow.
Then it generalizes. So every time somebody seems as though they might disagree with you or be distracted, that's then we're getting into a whole nother issue. That could signal us. So that's a trigger that could signal us to keep quiet or to believe the situation is a confrontation. I mean, I hear that all day long. Oh, I don't like confrontations. Huh, wonder why. And what's a confrontation for you? What's a confrontation? What is a confrontation for this person who says, because for me, what they're describing is a day-to-day simple
Dialogue. Yeah. Wow.
That's not a confrontation.
Right.
And then we have some parents who'll be like, I'll show you a confrontation.
But in my vocabulary, I would say I'm chill. Like I don't deal with confrontation. I just don't choose to, or find a solution, ends, move on. And honestly, in a long ago relationship, in a long relationship, that person always wanted to try and push a button.
Yes.
Push a button on me. And I was like, no, it's, figure it out. We'll work it out, blah, blah, blah. But then I figured it out. Her childhood, there was abuse. Her father was abusive. And in my non-professional opinion, that was her happy place. That was her comfortable place. So she always wanted to go back to that dialogue and that, push the buttons and have this, confrontation going on. And that's not me. and the relationship ended.
Well, good for you, but also good for her if she got therapy, because that's the adaptation. She adapted to her situation where, and I say that a lot, like people get used to the chaos and but good for you that you knew, but that was her adaptation.
I didn't know then though. A lot of this is, processed it later in life based on talking with people like you. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Whoa, wait a minute. Connect the dots. I don't know full certainty, but looking at it, from the overhead view, flying over the bleachers, now it seems to all come together. That's what was going on. And
I like it. And that brings us to the third podcast. So the first one, we talked about trauma and the hallmarks of it and how it could stem even from infancy or other times in life. And then the second podcast, we talked about attachment. So we've talked a little bit about if mommy seems gone, I'm going to adapt this way or that way, or not, if I have healthy enough attachment. And now you're saying, well, this relationship that you're remembering, well, the last week we talked about couples, and it was funny you asked about the 7-year itch, which is funny, but and we can get into the humor of that some other time. But couples, in many unknowing or unconscious ways, repeat the patterns that they adapted to. So what's our very first example of relationship? It's our relationship with mother and father, or whoever our caregivers, it really, whoever our primary caregivers are, because there's so many diverse families, right? It could be mother and mother, it could be father and father, it could be grandparents, it could be extended family, it could be all sorts of things, right? I mean, all sorts of scenarios, not things, because we're all people.
Sure.
But that's the thing about couples. When you see the pattern and you're bringing it up from this relationship that you just mentioned, she was playing out a pattern that she has not digested or
processed. She hasn't processed it. And I see this now, even as I do the work and then learn more and more. Other relationships, even if they're not, close, intimate, just, it could be a business relationship. Not that I'm looking for answers, but it's like, you just, you kind of take a step back and you're like, that kind of makes sense why that person is the way they are. I'm not judging. I'm just, trying to analyze it, and I don't overanalyze it. I'm just like, take it for face value. I find it interesting once you see these connections that we're talking about. We're out of time. I just want to keep going. It always happens.
Our time goes fast.
I know, right? Learned a lot, though, especially the infant side of things and how that can have an impact on your life. And you wouldn't even know it. You were a baby. How do you even know?
Unconscious.
Yes. Yes.
But we have a blueprint to know these things unconsciously. We are designed as human beings the way we've evolved. So that should be part of our conversation in the future.
Yeah. How to have those aha moments, how to, I call it connect the dots to back then. And I love what you said, the blueprint. It's all there. Even though you were you were there, you were a baby. Okay. If we're going to talk about the infant side of things. But you will trace it back. And I do believe if you even look at the dynamics of your parents, you might even see, that's reasonable to think that, my mom wasn't around that much as a baby. Whatever. I'm going very hypothetical here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Susie, how do we connect with you?
So my website is my name, Susan Engel, SusanEngel LCSW.com.
Gotcha. Licensed clinical social worker.
Correct, Linda.
Right. Gotcha. Always great talking with you. Really. You're like a breath of fresh air. I see the sun shining through in your background there, and that's what you are. That's what you are.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness.
No, I mean
Thank
it. You. Like I really do. And I can see why so many clients gravitate toward you and enjoy sessions with you because it's like talking with a friend. It really is.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Thank you
it.
so much.
Thank you. And we'll talk soon, okay?
Yes.
Appreciate it. We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
It's Thursday night, and you're grabbing drinks with some friends. Started off with a pitcher for the table, which quickly becomes two. There's pool. And there's the photo booth.
All right, everybody squeeze in. Say cheese!
Followed naturally by an order of wings. And another.
Can we get some extra ranch sauce?
Then there's the ceremonial nightcap.
So what are we doing this weekend?
And lastly, it's back to the car, which, if you're buzzed, could be the most expensive night of your life. Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.